All right, there we go. I think we're recording now.
Oh,
So, and this is Brent Rains for Alternate Perceptions Online Magazine. I know you've all heard that before. And tonight, for the second time, my special guest is Thomas Ferrario, the director of the Ted Phillips Marley Woods Research Center out in Missouri. It's February 28th, a Wednesday evening, and this is pre-recorded, but it'll be in the next March issue of Alternate Perceptions Online Magazine. And so, Thomas, good to chat with you again. There's a few new things that have come up since we last talked a few months back, and thought it would be interesting to follow up and discuss some of these. I know one thing I recently mentioned to you, I saw on Facebook where you had responded to someone about that childhood having a reptilian type encounter. And I wrote you and I commented that, I found many people who are researchers, investigators in the field actually, well, it's not that well known, but they actually started out in the field because they were looking for answers themselves. And a lot of people in ufology are actually experiencers themselves. They don't always maybe say so or identify themselves as such, but and you've certainly got a good, solid reputation in the field for being someone who's very serious about the subject and wants to do, uh, good work in the field and document things carefully and thoroughly investigate everything. And of course, you work with some of the top people, Ted, Phillips, who was one of Dr. Hynek's right-hand people, and Jacques Vallée and Bigelow, and I see recently you mentioned a Bruce Wooderman, I think was pronounced the name. He was a former state director in Missouri for MUFON and other people as well. So I guess if we could go on from there, I'll let you take it from there. If you can, maybe you can tell us about that, maybe how it started for you.
yeah, it's good to be here tonight, Brent. And I will tell you, it's been a life's work that I never thought I would be part of. Working with Ted Phillips was such a sheer pleasure. And, and through the years, and I just have to say, and I can't believe Ted's been gone almost 4 years now. And I just lost another individual, Bruce Witteman. I don't know if you were familiar with Bruce Witteman.
The name sounds kind of familiar, but I can't say that I really knew a whole lot about him. But obviously, he was someone that you thought very highly of and considered quite credible.
Yeah, he was the first state director for the Mutual UFO Network in St. Louis, Missouri, and but he worked with Ted also, and I met Ted through Bruce, working as I was assistant state director for MUFON for a number of years, and but we just lost Bruce 2 years ago, and I always thought I'd leave this to my mentors, and I didn't like the job. Believe me, I seen what Ted would have to do one day, and Bruce, and I didn't want to be part of that. And I was like Ted Phillips in the beginning. I was a nuts and bolts man, and believe me, the paranormal and that sort of thing I didn't want to get into, but that's exactly where I ended up in. And through Bruce Witteman, I will tell you, I was a part of things back in the 90s and 2001 that I'd like to talk a little bit about tonight. Unfortunately, we filmed a couple of shows out at Marley Woods with Ben Hansen, on UFO Witness, and we did some other things. But the property owner died out there, and it still is a very active site, I will tell you, out there, and we're trying to get back to that. But anyway, I'd like just to go into what I called and what facts I've learned through my mentors over the years. I've always put it out there as what I call the false flag scenario. And believe me, there again, through Bruce Witteman, I met Dr. Carol Rosen, which was Werner von Braun's assistant, actually, the father of our rocketry, and spent some time, a good amount of time with her, and Von Braun spoke about the false flag scenario. And that's a little bit about what I'd like to speak about tonight.
Okay. Well, you have to.
Okay. And, virtually with Bruce Whitteman and I, and we traveled so many places. He was a state director, and I'll just go into a little bit of our history together. Okay. Bruce was approached in 2001, actually 2000 was his first approach, because the Mutual UFO Network started in St. Louis, Missouri, and there was a period of time, I will tell you, when our government wanted disclosure back then, as you're well aware, all the attempts of disclosure and all the times they backed away from the table. But they came to Bruce in 2000 and set up the whole scenario. They had some members of the press, and they wanted to start disclosure. So they asked Bruce to be a part of the disclosure process. And Bruce asked me, because I was his assistant, if I would go with him, and I did. But we actually traveled to Las Vegas, and we were supposed to fly in, of course, the famous Janet Airlines. It does exist there. That goes in Area 51. And but we were supposed to go in there. We actually flew to Las Vegas, and I think they were going to have disclose everything they had. I absolutely don't. I think it would have been a dog and pony show. But the little thing happened while we were there, like so many times, called 911. And when that occurred, they explained to us that they had bigger fish to fry right now. And I totally understood that. We understood that. And the press had bigger stories to cover. So we were backed out of that case where we were going to have the first assigned disclosure. So then again, in around 2002, Bruce was approached by his contact. And now this sounds like the Smoking Man and the X-Files, and that's pretty much what it exactly was. But Bruce was approached. His contact was a gentleman that all we knew him by was his name was, we knew him by Red. And he was the operative to Bruce and I through the government. And he actually asked Bruce if we would go to, at that time, Quantico for a meeting with the media and people. So we actually traveled again to Quantico, if you can picture that. And we sat just like, yeah, that was a mind-bending experience, I will tell you. And in the process, we met a gentleman, which you may remember, Ray Stanford. Yeah. I don't know if you know the saucer in the Pentagon closet, and he actually back engineered things for the government. And we paid him a visit while we were at Quantico. But long story short, we went there, and long table, very many people, news media, and 4-hour wait. And our operative Red came out and told us, well, guys, I'm sorry, it's off again. And I mean, at this point, we were just tired of being pulled around like this, our chain being pulled in. And Red said, well, he said, I'm sorry. He said, the way it works, guys, is 50% of the regime, the old regime, doesn't want disclosure, and they're the ones that sign the paychecks. And 50% of the younger people there do. And there's always that battle going on. So we spent, believe me, it was a heartbreaker again. So we went back, but over the next 2 years, we spent time with Red, and he did his best to fill Bruce and I, in some instance, Bruce more than I, but he disclosed a lot of things to us that I sent you a little video there with Bruce speaking, that Bruce spoke about some of what he was a part of and what we were a part of. And virtually Red told us some things that were in disclosure, the process, we would have gotten downgraded and, hard copies of, and a lot of the documentation. But he filled us in on a lot of the things. And, I will tell you at this point that had I not been with Ted Phillips over the years, which Ted, of course, was part of Blue Book with Alan Hynek, and Ted actually told us in Ted's later years, he actually filled us in and disclosed that Hynek had actually made him aware and brought him into an area, and not Area 51, I might add, but an Air Force base. And Ted was exposed to a real 30-foot disc in operation. So he got to see that and crash debris. And that's the first time in years that I knew Ted that he ever disclosed that to us, but he did. And so I was kind of prepared for what the gentleman that we knew by Red would disclose to us. And he told us a lot of the same technical aspects of what Ted had told us. But now this is where it really gets strange. And I'm going into an area where, believe me, ufologists hate me and they throw rocks, and that's fine. But, I just might add that I was brought up in the Catholic Church. I fell away from the church. And the last thing I ever expected in my later years was that I would be involved. Ufology would bring me full circle back into religion of any kind. But one of the things that read in the background telling us about a lot of the data on ufology and same case work and physical trace cases Ted had worked on. So I had that pedigree, that background in me to know what he was speaking about. A lot of it was factual. He started going into our government's close relationship with the Vatican. Now, let me tell you, when he did that, I was not prepared for that. And then he really blew up my mind, and Bruce kind of wasn't prepared for this either. And he told us, he said, look, guys, he said, the UFO stuff, the technical data, you can share. He said, but I just want it known when I speak about this now that I don't want this ever shared. And this is far above what I ever want to disclose with you guys. And so, we said, so let me get this straight. The UFO stuff is okay to talk about, what you're sharing, but the connection between our government and the Vatican is above top secret, above that. And he said, yeah, I said, that's the way I feel. Now, the only reason I'm sharing this now is because Red, our contact, has been dead now, probably going on 5 years. He had cancer, passed away, which my good friend Bruce Winneman had cancer. He's been gone now 2 years. And it's touched my family, I will tell you. But the one thing the reason why I feel that I'm the last one and I didn't envy my mentors that would have to bring this forward one day, but I'm virtually about the last one left. So I feel my obligation right now in the world we live in that I share some of this. And virtually some of the things that Red shared with us was that it always has been a close connection from the beginning of our country's history with the Vatican and the church, of course, much more than anyone realizes. And the Vatican, the Holy See, still to this day, they have a very close working relationship with. And this gets into an area that gets very touchy. And here again, I was so fortunate because in St. Louis, Missouri, and this all comes full circle, and it's hard, you couldn't put this together. We had a gentleman named Reverend John Schussler in St. Louis, Missouri, that was kind of our field chaplain in MUFON. And he knew quite a bit about this, the Vatican and our government. So I had a little background with him on this. And as a young child, I had befriended a Franciscan friar which I used to give his name, and now his family has requested, he's passed on now too, but his family has requested I don't give his name. So, and that's okay. But he came from a very wealthy family. He had the pedigree. His family sent him as a seminary student to Rome, and the man actually, he knew Koine Greek, ancient Hebrew, and Aramaic and other languages. And when you have that pedigree on you, back in the day, in the 60s, 70s, they had a problem in the Vatican, down in the libraries, of a lot of the documentation with the fungus they were fighting, and they were translating this, rewriting the journals. But there again, I'll say that our government learned compartmentalization they virtually learned how to keep secrets from the Vatican. And the way they handled it in the Vatican with these, like my friend that was a seminary student, they'd go down and do a couple pages, a paragraph, and they'd be out of there. Now, so no one knew the whole big picture, except unfortunately for them, or fortunately for us. They talked when they left the area, some of the young seminary students, and they put two and two together, and they shared what they had learned. And so as a young child, I learned a lot from him that I filed away, and not ever thinking in a million years it would back up the stories that I would get one day from a man that was our operative. But virtually what it entails is that the close working relationship that the Vatican has with our government is such that they go into what we call the false flag scenario, and they knew the reality of this one day, that one day there would be an event in the world. And I must say at this point, I don't think we're too far from this, from the way the world conditions are. But when mankind was at its lowest, there would be an event when an alien posing as an alien race would come to Earth, and they would give mankind every technology, whatever they needed to pull them out of the brink of oblivion. But this race is not alien in origin. It's actually comes from, it's dimensional. As I will tell you that, and Ted, Phillips, and we worked with Jacques Vallée out at Marley Woods, and Douglas Trumbull, and we were so fortunate to have Jacques out there with us, but they proved, and we proved in Marley as they proved at Skinwalker back in the Bigelow days. And we did have a short affiliation with Bigelow, I'll tell you. It didn't work out, but we did. And that this is all dimensional, and we proved it in many ways. And that the structured craft that Ted and I like to deal with they're dimensional craft, they're not interplanetary. And I'll just, we worked with Stanton T. Freeman, the nuclear physicist, and Stanton always told me, he said that he knew I was a Star Trek nut. I liked Star Trek back in the day. And he said, "Do you think it's going to happen that way, Tom?" And I said, "Well, we're not there yet, but I think so." And Stan would tell me, he said that, it'll be dimensional. It's not going to be light speed and this with our physics here. He said, and he would break my heart, he'd say that, to take an object the size of a pea to attain light speed would take the combined energy output of the Earth for 100 years. Now, do you think it's practical we'll have a starship? And I would have to agree, I said, well, no, but he said, when you go dimensional, you can go interplanetary and all the above. But we proved out there, and and Jacques was with us, and Jacques' favorite statement out there, I will tell you, one of his phrases that he speaks about and he said the UFO phenomena represents evidence for other dimensions that simply cannot be understood apart from their physic and symbolic reality. What we see here is not an alien invasion, but it is a spiritual system that acts on humans and uses humans. Now, I couldn't have put it better myself than Dr. Jacques Vallée that worked with us. So, but virtually what's going to occur is this is going to take place. And Rod Serling, you know, he actually produced a film called UFOs, It Has Begun, you know, and with Burgess Meredith. And I urge everybody to get that video. But really what that was, he was a lot higher caliber above our pay grade. But he was promised by the government he'd start that movie, and they would give him, of course, the documentation and actual footage of a meeting, a landing of a craft. And at the last minute, he started the movie. And as they so often do, they did it with Walt Disney and Werner von Braun. They did it with, you know, Rod Serling, and they pulled out. He went ahead and made that movie, and it's a very good, well done movie, factual. But he kind of, in sticking his finger in the government's eye, you might remember the episode of Twilight Zone called To Serve Man. And virtually that was the scenario, the false flag scenario that he knew would occur, and they were going to share data with him, and we knew. But that in that whole, just a quick synopsis of that episode was an alien race comes to Earth. They share technology, they share food production, medical cures, in weaponry to protect every country. And at the end of the movie, and their motivation was not the welfare of the people there. He's climbing on board the disc to go to their planet to visit, and his assistant comes running that they had deciphered the manual, the big book that he taught it to serve man. And she says, it's not a technical book, it's a cookbook. And their motivation was to get people to come to their planet. And I'm not saying for a minute that's the motivation what's going on here, but in the nature of it being evil, it is, because what's going to occur is going to come for our welfare and our benefit. And their intent is that we serve them after a time. And actually we look upon them as, when they were here before, as gods. And this goes into the Nephilim and the fallen angel realm. And a lot of people don't like me to go there, but I will tell you that that's what I truly believe this is about. And we're dealing with an evil right now that, and I go to bed every night. I do believe that the event that's going to hurt the whole world right now and bring mankind down to a place it doesn't want to be. And from friends I still have in the DOD, I believe we're very close maybe to our electrical grid being taken out. And let me tell you, when that event happens, our government's own figures is that 90% of the population will die. And people think you're crazy when you say that, but they don't realize, how important electricity. You don't have water, food, medical treatment, cures, medicine, and it doesn't get any worse than that. I will tell you. I made a little movie on my YouTube channel, and I urge people to go there. I have a lot of footage about Marley, myself, my history, and about what would happen if the grid goes down. And there's excellent films on that, I will tell you. But I do believe that's going to be the event, the false flag event that's going to come, and they're going to use that to come in and save mankind and the whole world. And believe me, when they come on this dimension, their physics are far above our physics, and they will pull lightning down from the sky. They will work miracles, and you name it, they will give to us. And I just believe right now we're not far from that. And I talk about, when I say that, people think I'm getting political now, and believe me, I'm not political at all. I do believe, and this is so far beyond politics, I don't believe the Republicans or the Democrats have the capabilities or the intelligence to worldwide pull this off. There's hands, and there again, this comes into play from the contact with the Vatican, that there's the, you might call it the puppeteer behind the scene that's pulling the strings, that's coordinating all this. And it's no accident right now that the United States borders are down. Over 200, and I get this from a good source. Some people think it's crazy, but I trust the source I get it from. There's over 200 people on the terrorist watch list that have infiltrated into our country now. And, you know, from what I'm told, they've had practice runs on the West and East Coast, taking out substations. And it could be the 7 key substations taken out by rifle would bring the grid down. So that's how, you know, delicate our grid is right now. But I do believe that what's behind the scenes is evil, and it's goes beyond man's comprehension. And this gets into, from sources I have, I really believe that the technology, some call them aliens, I think it's remnants of the fallen angels and the evil that is orchestrating this behind the scenes. So there you have a little bit of the message that we were told. And believe me, I never thought I'd be the one to be touching this material at all. Didn't want to be, but I'm virtually one of the last that was with these people. And I don't think you'll see, there were other people that have known this. I don't foresee any of them coming out. And I will tell you, I still worked with, I had a friend that wanted to go on my last podcast. He was actually retired member of the DOD, and I didn't want to bring that on the last host I was on. And he gives me emails once in a while in terminology to the degree he doesn't like a lot of what I do. He always gives me emails to something like, "My friend, you have a habit of sailing in treacherous waters." So.
Wow. Well, I don't know where to begin. You know, so Ted Phillips he didn't have this connection with this red, then I guess. That was you and Bruce, right? But he was shown a flying saucer by Dr. Hynek at Air Force Base, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. But the Vatican himself doesn't really know all the details, or this is some of the people around him. I know that the scribes or whatever, the people who are writing material down from ancient scripts or whatever.
Yeah, I think I know what you're speaking about there. It's breaking up a little bit my side here, but
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was wondering if the Vatican himself was fully aware of what was going on, or if it was some of those around him who were more knowledgeable about it. You know, the people who are working to write all this material down from ancient scriptures and such. Is that right? Or
yeah, it just I'm sorry, I'm having my sides breaking up a little bit here, but one of the things I wanted to go into was I don't know how familiar you were with Ted's Project Moonshaft.
I wasn't. But I have included the video you posted of him, you know, describing it and such that you had on YouTube that you just presented on Facebook. I've gone ahead and linked it to our news link section in the next issue, the March issue. So it will be there. That really intrigued me because I didn't know he was involved in something, you know, of course you were involved to help do the research and such, set up his visits and such, I guess, you know, when he went to, was it in Ukraine that this was?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that was in,
Wow.
it was, you know, the gentleman, and here again, Ted worked with Professor Hynek on this actually, on Moonshaft project, and that was in Slovakia, is where the actual
Okay.
one. But we did find that there are several more of these things, and the interesting thing again about this is that one of my and we were going to get back over to Slovakia with Ted, and it never worked out. And we were working with another producer, going to get over there, and then the war broke out, of course, now in the Ukraine, and so it's still doable, but it's very risky, and we're still thinking about doing it. But I, through one of my other sources, and again, one of my theologians that I touched base with, he really made me aware, because Ted found out rather than just one, the moon shaft artifact, which was the artifact that a gentleman, Czech mining engineer named Anton Horek, that came from a rich family. And then, of course, the Nazis took away his family's wealth and his farm and their several mines they had. And he actually became a member of the underground army. And but he was wounded and he got away, and a sheep herder named Slovak rescued him and hid him in a cave. And that's where he found this object in the cave after days. And he was a mining engineer. He had 4 degrees. He spoke 3 languages, and he knew what should not be in a cave or underground. He knew mining equipment, and he come across this object in a cave, a black moon-shaped cylinder, crescent-shaped object, extended down below in the mountain as far as he could tell, and vertically into the rock. And got inside this object and scraped debris away, and actually felt warm air at one point. And he put his ear down and he heard what he described as heavy turbines running in this object. Now, this is instrumentality that should not be there, makes no sense whatsoever, but it was there, and he never could come up with a purpose of what it was. And Ted was actually, he went 2 trips there, and unfortunately the area had been bombed repeatedly by the Nazis, and it had caved in part of on this object. And Ted was going to get back the 3rd trip to help excavate this, and he never got back there. The geopolitical, there was a war broke out back then at that time, and so Ted never got back, and we were going to get back. But in the meantime, Ted found out through other people there that there were actually 3 more of these objects in Europe, and then he was made aware of 2 in the United States. Now, I was speaking one day to my theologian friend, and that we couldn't make any sense out of these objects. And of course, my theologian friend, better versed than I am biblically, he said, "Well, I can tell you what those are, Tom." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Do you know anything about end times and scenario?" And I know a little bit, yeah. But he said, these are actually, that biblically they're written about in there. And this is what the Nephilim and the fallen angels that were sent into the earth were going to use to come back. And it was their technology that was going to be at the right time, how they return to the surface. And so, I just wish Ted could have been around long enough yet and that's out of all the years that Ted studied these things and I knew about them, that's the only thing that can make any sense to me about these things. So, and let me tell you the whole story. Ted found out when he was over there that the Nazis, when he was over there in World War II, they were after these things. Adolf Hitler knew about these things, and he actually formed his first groups of spedunkers or cave explorers to try to find these things. It's an Indiana Jones story. It really is. But it goes back into a history that, and we're working with people trying to do it. Just the background of this, because even like Anton Hurek, his parents had the mining of uranium and ore. Madame Curie actually bought her first uranium from his family. So, I mean, the whole pedigree of the story is just, like Ted said, it's the greatest story never told. But I do believe these objects that I've just recently had become aware of, I do believe that comes into play right where we are right now. And so it's gone full circle, and I'll tell you, it's in a place I never thought that I would be, and didn't want to be there. And I tell people, accept what you want of this, throw out what you want. Think this guy's crazy. I feel my obligation to share what I've been a part of, and know before I kick the bucket. So,
Man, well, gee. Now, Ted Phillips, I know you posted recently that toward the end of it, all these negative things that were going on, but he actually had a very positive visitation, right? A being of light or something.
yeah, that Ted had been there. Is that what you're saying there?
No, that Ted had a positive experience with a being toward the end of it, right?
Right.
A being of light, like maybe an angel. I'm not sure, but I know that you posted a picture of an illustration of like a glowing being
Yeah.
on Facebook,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that maybe this was like an angel or something that he encountered, or that Ted Phillips had encountered.
Yeah. Yeah, Ted, I'm sorry, I'm having my connection's breaking up here really bad, but yeah, Ted actually had been in the cave. Is that what you're questioning?
Oh, well, let's see. No, actually, what I'm saying is that Ted had a visitation, a being that came to Ted, and it was a very positive experience. It may have happened in Missouri or someplace, but or maybe at Marley Woods. But you posted on Facebook where he had a very positive experience with a being that seemed to
Yeah.
be, I guess, from the illustration, the being glowed and was one of the good guys. This being was
Oh,
one of the good guys.
yeah, the Ted's experience and mine and Marley. You're talking about the light beam?
Yeah, the light. Well, no, the light being, the creature, the creature that came to
Oh,
him and spoke with him.
oh,
I was
the
wondering,
white, the
yeah, the
white
white.
cryptid.
Yeah, I was wondering what you could tell us about that, if you could.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things out in Marley that you never knew what was you're going to deal with, but that was a huge white cryptid out there we dealt with that one of the ranchers had shot, and he claimed he made it red, and we found it went, and this is where it gets strange again. The rancher said it went through a 4-strand barbed wire fence. Now, when he said it didn't go over or under, it went through, like he thought it dematerialized or just went through the fence without stopping. And we did get out there and we found tracks, we got cast, we found 16-inch white long hairs that we sent off to one of his best persons that did analysis, Phyllis Budinger, that was the go-to. She still has her own lab. And the 16-inch long white hairs came back. They weren't canine, they weren't bovine. They came up as unknown match for anything. And there was some crude, at the time, DNA work done, and it came up no match. Oh, you got it?
Did you see the message?
Okay.
I thought maybe that might clear up that too.
Am I still there?
Yeah, he's still there.
Okay. But anyway,
Sorry.
long story short, this was an animal that came through, and we've had Bigfoot sightings, not on the ranch, but the only one in the county was near Marley Woods. We've had cattle mutilations. We've had horse barn incident, a horse blown up in a barn like it was in a microwave oven, that whole story. And on and on. And had one abduction case out there, we believe. We found out in later years of a child. So Marley Woods and even when Bigelow's men were out and Jacques Vallée was out to our place at Marley, they felt there was a higher case for strangeness at Marley than even at Skinwalker. And it paralleled so much of what Skinwalker people are dealing with. And we nailed down that microwave energy was our main culprit that injured people. Ted and myself were injured by microwave radiation. And even when we filmed out with Ben Hansen the last time on UFO Witness, I had a new piece of equipment that was totally devoted to microwave spectrum. And, 3 o'clock in the morning out in the field, no power lines, nothing, on 1,200 acre ranch. 3 times I had this piece of equipment go from, it had visual cues and audible cues, and it went, green, yellow, red. Thank God it was only for a brief instant, but it was in the danger area. We had that happen 3 times. So whatever's out there is still out there. And I will tell you that when we left that night, I was the last one there, and Ben Hansen and the crew, everybody left, pulled out. I checked the cabin, made sure the lights were off, doors were locked, everything was buttoned up. And unfortunately, about 6 weeks later, I got a call from the family. The property owner that was out there with us, he was a man in his 80s, but he was in good health. He had a stroke out there on the property and passed away. But his family, when they told me that they notified me he had passed away out there, they said that, well, he was pretty surprised of the way you left the property, Tom. And I regret I didn't call him in that time period after I left. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, he actually went out the next morning and he said he found the doors of the cabin were open, the lights were on, and the water was running. And I truly believe that was just the intelligence that's out there. That Ted said, you're dealing with an intelligence you're never going to get ahead of. It's always one step ahead of you. And I truly believe it was just letting me know that it was there yet, it was in charge, and it controlled the place, not us. So, but we had a lot of things happen that night when we filmed out there, even with the crew, So it's a very real, when it happens, and but that's what you're dealing with, And as far as the cryptids out there, Ted and I knew, there's not a living, breeding population of these 400-pound white polar bear sloth animals running around. But when they come through dimensionally, they're there and they're as real as you and I. And we really believe They can take the form of anything. And here again, this steps on feet of ufologists and a lot of people. We really believe that the intelligence we learned, it can't read your mind, but what it can do, it can read your emotions, which I've seen demonstrations of that will give you the indication that it's something's reading your mind, but it's reading your emotions to the point where it's almost as good as reading your mind. But it will be whatever you want to see at the particular moment is what it comes through and you'll witness. As far as skinwalkers, and we had wolf-like beings out there in Marley, just like they had a skinwalker. But you name it, it's, and we followed tracks in Marley that the property owner, it wasn't unusual to see tracks in a light snow go out on a pond with very thin ice, wouldn't support the weight of a man. And he'd see, 10-inch wide, 3-toed tracks in the snow go out on thin ice, which wouldn't support a man. And you're talking about a good deal of mass there, and would terminate in the center of the pond on the light snow. So was it in a state of transition dimensionally that there wasn't any weight there? Or was this just putting these tracks down to pull somebody's chain, as it so often does? But that's what you're dealing with, you're never going to get ahead of it. And but a large part of what this is, we believe it's all comes from the same place. The spiritual realm. We had structured craft out there in Marley, came through, and the property owners over the years had documented about any kind, shape, variety, from 20, 30 foot, 60-foot disc to tubular, 100-foot long, black silhouetted tank, like a tank with yellow windows along the sides of it out there. And the light ball activity we dealt with out there, and it just goes on and on,
Wow. So they can have these, you can have these things that they're like almost like a holograph projection, and yet then at other times they can be solid craft. They can be completely solid.
Yeah.
Like the moonshaft situation, or what Dr. Hynek had shown Ted, you said.
Yeah.
So it's pretty bizarre.
It is, and a lot of people, they made the accusation that a lot of this was military. It was holographic, as they expect. And I mean, virtually now, between the drone technology in the sky and holographic, capabilities now, thank God we didn't have to deal with all that to weed that out back then, because virtually now you can't trust anything you see, even what you photograph now. I mean, there's so many other elements into it now that have entered into it that, thank God we didn't have to deal with all that on top of it yet, but
yeah. Yeah, it's a very complex and confusing situation. I don't know what else to say. Wow. Well, I'm going to, I guess I've had you on here an hour talking. If I could, I'd like to go ahead and sign off, but don't go anywhere, because I'd like to talk with you some more if I could. So anyway, is there any updates, any articles or videos, or maybe talks that you're going to be giving that you want to share with the listeners before we, end our interview?
Where was that?
Okay. Are there any final things you want to say before we end the interview? Maybe like,
Just
like, yeah, you maybe like
Just-
you're going to give a talk on some radio show, or something you want to bring people to, to
yeah,
know about.
the one thing I would just like to tell people about all this is that a lot of this stuff that's dimensional, I will tell you that we're on this side of the dimension. We're supposed to be here. We have the authority over it. And I always tell people, use that authority wisely. You have the authority over it. But if you, and this can be mundane little things like calling this stuff forward, a Ouija board, a seance, just out investigating, like ghost hunters go out in the paranormal field. And when you ask this stuff to come forward, you're actually giving it the permission to be on this side, and you're giving it the authority. But always remember, question everything. Remember, you have the authority over this. And I post on I've got a YouTube channel. I post everything current that's going on with me, and my Facebook page, and then of course the Ted Phillips Marley Woods research page we've got up. And we try to post anything current going on with Marley Woods there and what's happening. And unfortunately, it's not been a whole lot lately, but we're going to try to get back and do some things there. But it's extremely difficult. And but I will tell you that my friend is state director, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, is state director of MUFON in Missouri. And she's like my sister. She's written a couple books. We founded the MUFON dive team for a while with John Schuessler, and but I will tell you that she keeps me informed that and just here again, it's like the biblical aspect of this. It's increasing. She tells me in Missouri there's like 3 or 4 places now like Marley Woods just in Missouri. This phenomenon is increasing. And believe me, when I was in MUFON with Bruce Whitteman, assistant state director, we never had anything like this approaching Marley Woods ever. I mean, we had sightings and we went out and had some landings, physical trace, but we didn't have 3 or 4 places like Marley Woods in Missouri. And other state directors have informed her they're dealing now with more places like this. So we really feel like the boundaries, that the dimensional boundaries are weakening, and this stuff is crossing over more. And there again, that gets biblical. But I will tell you that it's very real. It's ongoing. But I tell people just ask. Never go into anything without asking questions, and believe everything completely. And remember, you have the authority over this stuff unless you give it away.
All righty then. Well, thank you very much, Thomas, for this thought-provoking series of experiences you've had to share with us, and we appreciate it. I'm gonna have to back up and meditate on it. I think it's quite extraordinary. So again, thank you very much, and I want to keep in touch, and hopefully we'll get the audio better. Maybe next time.
Yeah, I hope so. And I apologize for that, but no, I've enjoyed it. And it's a lot to digest, I know, but like I tell people, just if you can pick if things start going down, just remember just to question everything, and remember you do have the authority over it. So
No, that's good to know. That's good to know. Absolutely.